Immersion events are a series of mechanics and interactions that emphasize the emotion of immersion, whether through the depth of a world or its characters. This distinction is most common with Immersive Maze events and Immersive Banter events, spawning historical conceptions of Metroidvania and Immersive Sim games, respectively. Describing a game using event spaces is less adhered to the perceived importance of those events when they are not grouped with emotional spaces such as immersion. For example, the hydraulic hacking in BioShock is a Mazer event. However, it doesn't occupy the primary event space of that game, which instead settles somewhere between Striker and Spotter. Mario games operate largely within the Mazer event space, yet the emotion of immersion is rarely engaged by design of his early entries. His landmarking 3D ventures inherit the zoning features of land games to become sufficiently immersive, along with similar so-called collectathons. Perhaps the most capital examples can be found via the old address, Metroidvania. This genre pre-establishes the immersive mazer as games with a comprehensive and largely relative traversal across an interconnected level, as well as a characterization of the player-actor through the accumulation of their ability to traverse. With Metroid, I'm fondly familiar, but on Castlevania, I'm sorely lacking in adequate context, as I just picked up Symphony of the Night this past year. What I found upon early impressions is that Castlevania tends to focus more on its Striker event space, designing long hallways filled with a variety of enemies to defeat. Although it could sustain debate as to whether early Striker events had also evoked enough immersion on their own, the more recent legacy of Dark Souls cemented ideas about the immersive Striker in the public consciousness, with its subtextual richness of character for bosses and enemies, conveyed through attack behaviors, relation to the environment and Mazer events, item drops, and who drops what. The crafted together word salad that is Metroidvania might instead be immersive spotters. Spotter events are in direct contrast to sitter events, where one is a proactive observation and the other is a pre-active observation. The immersive spotter is usually in reference to a different event space in the foreground. Animal Well or The Witness are more pointed towards Mazer events, whereas games like Outer Wilds or Blueprints are pointed towards banter events. In other words, text-based game expressions. Last but not least is the original conception of games delivering immersion through banter events. Focused, characterizing details of the environment or actors can scale much higher if they don't need to be rendered graphically, although the ability to have both at once appears to be the point of public conception for the immersive sim, specifically with the style of Infinity Engine games, where Mazer events became less of a mathematical nerve game feature and more of the ubiquitously upwelling craving for land game features. As with any event space or mood genre, focus, motivation, emotion, and subsequent prescription of an immersive banter is dependent on the player. Skyrim may be of a contemptible quality unbefitting of deeming its events as sufficiently immersive, but the design is assuredly engaged in delivering on that premise. The especially tricky thing with banter events and land moods is their insistence of spreading onto everything whether or not it functions smoothly for the experience, because for the most part these elements are perceived to be the dimensions of analysis for a game's story. A scene in a video game differs from a movie because of a more personal frame of reference, and in a sense, even watching dialogue play out is a ludonarrative, with precursor input of whatever actions allowed the scene to play. In summation, immersive games have a tendency towards the moods and events surrounding the emotional dichotomy of immersion and fatigue, namely land and heart moods as well as mazer and banter events. The immersive event genres create a set of analogous terms for a trend of nomenclature that was frankly getting out of hand. But what do you think? Do you still prefer the old names for these genres? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more game analysis.